Hey everyone, hope you're doing great. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we'll dive into what if Deku's Sage mode replaced One for All. Smash that subscribe button, and be sure to peek at the description below. Let's begin. The world was not built for silence. That was the first thing Izuku Midoriya learned, long before he learned the word quirkless. The world was a cacophony. It was the screech of rubber on asphalt, the electric hum of neon signs in Muzurifu, the drone of air conditioning units, and the endless, vibrating chatter of millions of people possessing extraordinary abilities. For Izuku, the noise was physical. From a young age, his senses had been dialed up to a frequency that made existence uncomfortable. He could hear the scratch of a pen on paper 3 rooms away. He could smell the ozone generated by a minor electric quirk activation down the street. It wasn't a quirk, the doctors had been very specific about that, but a genetic anomaly. A mutation of the nervous system. He's a vessel with the lid left open, the doctor had told Inko Midoriya, tapping the X-ray that showed the extra joint in the pinky toe. He has no quirk factor. No power of his own. But his body is strangely receptive. Hypersensitive. He'll likely suffer from migraines and anxiety his whole life. I'm sorry, Mrs. Midoriya. He can't be a hero. A loud noise in a battle zone could incapacitate him. Izuku didn't cry that day. He just covered his ears. 10 years later, the hands were still over his ears, though now it was metaphorical. Midoriya, don't tell me you're still aiming for Yue? The teacher's voice cut through the classroom like a serrated knife. Izuku flinched, his shoulders hunching instinctively. The air pressure in the room shifted instantly. A sharp drop, preceded by the smell of nitroglycerin. Ha! Katsuki Bakugo didn't speak, he detonated words. He kicked his desk, the sound echoing like a gunshot in Izuku's sensitive ears. Deku! You're worse than the rejects. You're quirkless and you jump at your own shadow. You think they'd let a sensory-overloaded coward like you into the hero course? The class erupted in laughter. To Izuku, it sounded like a landslide. I'd been studying, Izuku stammered, clutching his notebook, Hero Analysis for the Future number 13. There are precedents for support items, and situational awareness. Awareness? Bakugo scoffed, stalking forward. He slammed a palm onto Izuku's desk. Pop crackle. You're aware of everything except your own worthlessness. The day proceeded in a blur of humiliation. The notebook was snatched, scorched, and tossed out the window. The koi pond. The fish nibbling at his dreams. And finally, the advice that rang louder than any explosion. If you want to be a hero that badly, there's a quick way to do it. Take a swan dive off the roof and pray for a quirk in your next life. Izuku stood at the school gate, watching Bakugo's retreating back. The vibrations of Bakugo's footsteps faded into the city hum. Izuku didn't hate him. That was the worst part. He couldn't hate Kaken because Kaken was right. In a world of gods and monsters, Izuku was a boy who flinched when a book dropped. He walked home the long way, seeking the quietest route. He needed to avoid the main roads. The noise was too much today. His head throbbed. He ended up under the bridge. The acoustics were better here. The shadows dampened the light. Squelch. The sound was wet, heavy, and wrong. Izuku spun around. The manhole cover rattled, and a fluid, dark mass erupted from the sewers. Eyes formed in the muck, manic, desperate eyes. A medium-sized invisibility cloak. The sludge hissed. Izuku's analysis brain kicked in instantly. Fluid body. Viscosity high. Weakness. Likely eyes or mouth, but physical attacks will pass through. Needs containment. But his body didn't move. The villain lunged. The sludge forced its way down Izuku's throat. It tasted like oil and rot. Izuku clawed at the liquid, but his fingers found no purchase. His vision blurred. The noise of his own heartbeat was deafening, drowning out the villain's laughter. I'm dying, he realized. I'm dying, and I never did anything. Then came the boom. Fear not. The sewer grate exploded upward. A figure, backlit by the afternoon sun, muscular and imposing. Why? Because I am here. A single punch. The wind pressure alone peeled the slime off Izuku's skin. The force knocked Izuku unconscious, his last sensory input being the overwhelming, charismatic loudness of the symbol of peace. He woke up to a slap on the cheek. Hey! Hey! Good, All Might. The greatest hero. Standing right there. Izuku scrambled back, fumbling for his notebook. The autograph was already there. He wanted to ask. He needed to ask. The question that had burned in his chest for a decade. All Might. Can a quirkless person be a hero like you? The steam rose. The smile faltered, and the truth came out. The injury. The limit. The reality of the job. I cannot simply say yes, the skeletal form of All Might said, his voice grave and low. Pros are always risking their lives. Without power, can you save anyone? It's not wrong to dream, young man, but you have to see the reality. All Might left. He had to take the bottle containing the villain to the police. Izuku was left alone on the rooftop. The wind howled. Reality. Izuku walked. He didn't know where he was going. He just walked until the noises of the city began to converge into a single point of panic. Explosions. Screams. He found himself at the shopping district. The fires raged. The sludge villain had escaped. And he had a hostage. Izuku saw the familiar shock of ash-blonde hair. Bakugo. The villain was suffocating him. Bakugo was thrashing, setting off explosions that only fueled the chaos. The heroes, Death Arms, Kamiri Woods, Empty Lady, were standing back, waiting for someone with the right quirk. Izuku's eyes locked with Bakugo's. For a second, the arrogance was gone. Bakugo looked terrified. He looked like he was pleading for help. Izuku's feet twitched. Move, he screamed at himself. Move. Run. Throw your bag. Do something, but he couldn't. The fear wasn't just mental, it was biological. His hypersensitive nervous system was flooded with the sheer volume of the danger, the heat of the fire, the screams of the crowd, the smell of burning sugar and flesh. It paralyzed him. He stood rooted to the spot, trembling, tears streaming down his face. I am not a hero, Izuku thought, the realization breaking his heart. I am a spectator. Eventually, All Might appeared again, pushing past his limit to save Bakugo with a Detroit smash that changed the weather. The crowd cheered. The reporters swarmed. Izuku slipped away. He didn't wait for the scolding from the heroes. He didn't wait for Bakugo's confusing anger. He ran. He ran past his apartment. He ran past the park. He ran until the pavement turned to dirt, and the streetlights were replaced by the canopy of trees. He ran into the deep, forgotten woods bordering the outskirts of Mizurufu, near the old Takoba Mountains. He needed silence. He needed the world to stop screaming. The forest was dense, the kind of old growth that civilization had forgotten to pave over. The further Izuku went, the quieter it got. The electric hum of the city faded, replaced by the rustle of leaves and the chirp of crickets. He collapsed in a clearing, gasping for air. His lungs burned. I give up, he whispered to the dirt. I give up. He lay there for an hour, letting the tears dry. The sun began to set, casting long, orange shadows through the trees. It was then that he noticed the statue. It was partially buried in moss and ivy, sitting in the center of the clearing. It wasn't a statue of a Buddha or a Shinto deity. It was a toad. A stone toad, sitting cross-legged, hands clasped in prayer. It wore a carved necklace of large beads. Izuku sat up, wiping his eyes. There was something strange about the air here. It felt heavy. Thick. Like walking through water. He crawled toward the statue. It was old, the stone weathered by centuries. At the base of the statue, there was a small, dry basin. Hello? Izuku whispered. You are loud, little human. Izuku jumped, scrambling backward until his back hit a tree. Who's there? I have a black belt in running away. Down here. Izuku looked. Sitting on top of the stone toad's head was a real toad. It was small, wrinkled, and orange-skinned with rectangular pupils. It looked ancient. It held a tiny wooden staff. A quirk? Izuku breathed. An animal with a quirk? Quirk. The toad croaked the word like it was a bad taste. A new word for an old noise. I am Fukasaku. And you, boy, are leaking spiritual energy like a cracked pot. Spiritual, what? The toad hopped down, landing with a surprising weight for its size. You came here seeking silence, did you not? Your soul is turbulent. Your senses are wide open. You hear everything, yet you listen to nothing. Izuku stared. The doctor said I have a mutation. My nervous system is hypersensitive. A mutation? Perhaps. Or perhaps you are simply one of the rare few born with a body capable of connecting to the natural energy of the earth. But you lack the training to control it. So, the world overwhelms you. The toad hopped closer. Why were you crying, boy? Izuku looked at his hands. I wanted to be a hero. But I froze. My friend was dying, and I just stood there. I'm weak. Movement is not the only strength, Fukasaku said. Sometimes, the greatest power comes from sitting still. Izuku laughed bitterly. Sitting still doesn't save people from villains, does it not? The toad tapped his staff on the ground. Suddenly, the heavy air in the clearing swirled. The wind picked up, but it wasn't chaotic. It spiraled around the toad. Izuku felt the pressure drop. The stone statue behind the toad seemed to glow faintly. I am a sage, the toad said. My kind has watched this world since before the glowing humans appeared. We master senjutsu, the art of drawing nature explicitly into the body. It grants power to rival your all-might, sensory perception that spans miles, and a body of steel. But it requires absolute stillness to gather. Izuku's eyes went wide. Power? Without a quirk? Not a quirk. An art. A discipline. Fukasaku looked at Izuku with those rectangular, unnerving eyes. You have the body for it. I can feel your affinity. You are like a sponge soaking up the forest's grief, but you are undisciplined. If you try to learn this, you might turn into a stone frog for all eternity. Izuku looked at the stone statue again. A chill ran down his spine. That statue was a person? He was impatient, Fukasaku said dryly. Izuku swallowed. He thought about the fire. About Bakugo's eyes. About All Might's pity. If I learn this. Izuku clenched his fist. Can I be a hero? Can I save people? If you master Sage Mode, you will not just be a hero, Fukasaku said. You will be a force of nature. But the path is harder than any school can teach. It requires giving up the need to be fast, to be flashy. You must become one with the stillness. Izuku took a deep breath. The forest air filled his lungs. For the first time all day, the ringing in his ears stopped. Teach me, Izuku said. Please. The first month, the agony of nothing. The training began the next day. Izuku expected push-ups. He expected running. He expected the kind of American superhero training montage he'd seen in movies. Instead, Fukasaku took him to a secluded waterfall deeper in the mountains. He placed a flat stone on top of a jagged rock in the middle of the rushing water. Sit, the toad ordered. Sit, sit. Don't move. Don't think. Feel the nature around you. Draw it in, but do not let it overwhelm you. Izuku sat. 10 minutes later, his legs were numb. 20 minutes later, his back screamed. 30 minutes later, his mind was racing. I should be studying math. I should be analyzing hero fights. What if Mom finds out I'm not at the library? Is this a prank? Am I taking advice from a hallucination caused by stress? Whack! Fukasaku's staff hit Izuku's shoulder hard. Ow! Your mind is louder than a thunderclap! The toad yelled. Stop thinking! Feel! It was torture. For a boy whose mind moved at a mile a minute, stillness was harder than lifting a truck. Izuku went home that night sore, wet, and frustrated. His mother Inko looked worried. Izuku, you look exhausted. Are you okay? I'm fine, Mom, he lied. Just studying hard. He wasn't studying. He was failing at sitting down. The third month, the oil. You are not dying, Fukasaku said, holding a bottle of special oil. Yet, they had moved past simple meditation. Now, Fukasaku applied the toad oil to Izuku's skin during meditation. It acted as a catalyst, forcing natural energy into Izuku's pores. The sensation was terrifying. The moment the oil touched him, Izuku felt his body expand. His skin felt like it was turning to bark. His face began to stretch. Control it! Fukasaku shouted. Balance your physical energy with the nature energy. If nature takes over, you become a frog. Izuku gritted his teeth. He focused on his own heartbeat. 1, 2, 3. He visualized the energy as a river. He had to be the banks of the river, guiding it, not drowning in it. He felt warts growing on his arms. Panic set in. Whack! The staff hit him, knocking the nature energy out of him. Izuku collapsed, gasping, his arms returning to normal human skin. Too much greed! Fukasaku scolded. You tried to take the whole forest. Take a leaf. Start with a leaf. This is impossible, Izuku wheezed. All might change the weather with a punch, the toad said, sitting on a rock. You think he did that by complaining? You have 10 months until the UA exam. Do you want to be a hero or a statue? Izuku got back on the rock. Again. The 6th month, the breakthrough. It happened during a thunderstorm. Izuku was sitting on the rock. The rain was torrential. Thunder shook the ground. Usually, the noise would cripple him, but today, Izuku wasn't hearing the thunder with his ears. He was feeling the vibration of the air before the sound arrived. He felt the static charge building in the clouds. He felt the fear of the birds hiding in the trees. He closed his eyes. He breathed in. He didn't just breathe air. He breathed the storm. The energy flowed into him. It didn't burn this time. It felt cool. It mixed with his own stamina, creating a third, powerful chakra, senjutsu. His muscles tightened, but not from tension. They became dense. Pigmentation appeared around his eyes, orange markings. His pupils shifted, becoming horizontal bars. The world stopped. He could feel a beetle walking on a leaf 50 meters away. He could feel Fukasaku's heartbeat. He could feel the structure of the water rushing beneath him. Fukasaku watched, his eyes widening. He's doing it! Perfect balance. Izuku opened his eyes. The world was high definition. He looked at a boulder across the stream. He didn't stand up. He simply thrust his palm forward. He didn't touch the boulder. He was 10 feet away. But the natural energy extended from his hand, an invisible extension of his body. Boom! The boulder didn't crack, it disintegrated. The invisible force pulverized the rock into dust, blowing a hole through the rain. Izuku stared at his hand. The orange markings faded as he lost concentration, and he slumped forward, exhausted. I did it. You did, Fukasaku said, a hint of pride in his croak. That is frog kumite. You strike with the energy around you, not just your fist. Now we must work on your endurance. You can only hold that mode for 30 seconds. The 9th month, the beach. While other students were cramming for tests, and while unbeknownst to Izuku, another boy might have been cleaning Dagoba Beach of trash, Izuku was at Dagoba Beach. But he wasn't cleaning. He was sitting on top of a pile of refrigerators. The beach was a perfect training ground. The chaos of the trash, the movement of the ocean, the wind. If he could meditate here, he could meditate anywhere. He sat cross-legged, perfectly still. A skinny, skeletal man with sunken eyes and blonde hair walked along the promenade. He coughed blood into a handkerchief, looking at the mess of the beach. I really should have found a successor to clean this up, All Might thought. It's a disgrace. Then, he saw the boy. Izuku was sitting atop a mountain of garbage. He looked small. Is he sleeping? All Might wondered. Dangerous place to nap. All Might walked closer. Young man. Izuku didn't move. He didn't twitch. All Might frowned. He stepped closer, climbing over a broken stove. As he got within 10 feet of the boy, All Might stopped. The hairs on the back of his neck stood up. It wasn't the aura of a villain. It was pressure. The air around the boy was heavy. It felt like standing next to a dormant volcano. What is this? All Might thought. A quirk activation? Suddenly, the pile of trash shifted. The refrigerators groaned and began to collapse. Izuku's eyes snapped open. They were yellow, with rectangular pupils. The orange pigmentation masked his eyes. In a blur of motion, Izuku leaped. He moved with unnatural grace, flipping in the air. He landed softly on the sand, carrying a stray cat that had been trapped in the debris. The pile of refrigerators crashed down where he had been sitting a second ago. Izuku set the cat down gently. The markings on his face receded. He took a deep breath, and the pressure in the air vanished. "Young man," All Might said, stepping out of the shadows in his skeletal form. "That was impressive reflexes." Izuku jumped, looking startled. "Oh! Hello? I didn't hear you approach." "That's rare." All Might looked at the boy. He recognized him. The boy from the slime incident. The one who had frozen. "You're the boy from the fire," All Might said. "The one who couldn't move." Izuku looked down. "Yes. That's me." "You've changed," All Might observed. "You feel different." "I'm learning to be still," Izuku said softly. "I'm learning to listen." All Might felt a pang of guilt. He had crushed this boy's dreams on that rooftop. And yet, here he was, training in his own strange way. "Young Midoriya," All Might said, remembering the name from the notebook. "I have been looking for a successor. Someone to inherit my power. I saw you that day. You froze, yes? But you stayed. You watched. And today, I see a strength in you I missed." Izuku froze. "Inherit your power? My quirk is capable of being passed down," All Might explained, deciding to take a leap of faith. "One for all. It stockpiles power. I believe you could be worthy. With your determination and my power, you could be the symbol of peace." It was the dream. The ultimate validation. The greatest hero offering him the greatest power. A year ago, Izuku would have said yes before All Might finished the sentence. Izuku looked at his hands. He felt the residual hum of the natural energy. He thought of Fukasaku. He thought of the silence in the forest. He thought of the hard, agonizing work of finding his own strength, borrowed not from a man, but from the world itself. Izuku started. He looked up at All Might. "Thank you? That is the greatest honor of my life." All Might smiled. "But I have to refuse." All Might choked. "Excuse me? I was born empty," Izuku said, his voice steady. "My doctor told me I was a vessel with the lid left open. For years I hated it. But I found a teacher. He taught me that being empty means I can be filled with something else. Not a quirk. But the energy of the wind, the earth, and the water." Izuku clenched his fist. "If I take your power, I'll just be another holder of One for All. I'll be trying to be you. But this power, this sage mode, it connects me to everything. I want to save people my way. I want to be the hero who brings calm to the chaos." All Might stared. He had expected excitement, tears, maybe fear. He hadn't expected this profound maturity. Sage mode. All Might muttered. "I have never heard of such a thing." "It's not a quirk," Izuku smiled. "It's just hard work. And sitting still." All Might laughed. It was a genuine, confused, but respectful laugh. "You are a strange boy, Midoriya Izuku. Very well. I respect your path. But UA is not easy. The entrance exam is in 1 month. I'll be ready," Izuku said. The day of the exam. The gates of UA High towered over the students. Izuku stood in the crowd. He wore his tracksuit. He didn't look nervous. For the first time in his life, the noise of the crowd didn't bother him. He let it wash over him like a stream. He saw Bakugo ahead of him. Bakugo turned, sneering. "Get out of my way, Deku. Unless you're here to watch." Izuku didn't flinch. He didn't stutter. He looked Bakugo in the eye. "Good luck, Kaken." Bakugo blinked, taken aback by the lack of fear. He scoffed and walked away. Izuku walked toward the gate. He tripped on a loose paving stone. His own clumsiness was still there, sage mode or not. He braced for impact, but he floated. "Are you okay?" A girl with a round face and brown hair touched his shoulder. "I used my quirk on you. Sorry I didn't ask." "It's bad luck to fall before the exam." Izuku landed gently. He looked at Ochako Uraraka. "Thanks," he said. "I'm Uraraka. Let's do our best." She cheered and ran inside. Izuku smiled. He reached into his pocket and touched the small, smooth stone Fukasaku had given him as a graduation gift. "Remember," the toad's voice echoed in his memory. "The battle is not to the swift, The battle is to the one who controls the flow. Izuku took a deep breath. He closed his eyes for 1 second, gathering a sliver of natural energy. His senses sharpened. He could hear the proctor, present mic, testing the microphone 3 floors up. He could hear the gears of the giant robots waiting in the battle centers. He opened his eyes. They flashed with a faint, horizontal bar for a microsecond. The boy who sat still began to walk. The written exam was a test of memory and logic, but for Izuku Midoriya, it was first and foremost a test of endurance against the sound of graphite. The examination hall was vast, a cavernous lecture theater filled with hundreds of aspiring heroes. To a normal person, the room was quiet, filled only with the soft scratching of pencils and the occasional cough. To Izuku, whose senses had been forcefully pried open by 10 months of meditation and toad oil, it sounded like 1,000 beetles skittering across a dry leaf. Scratch. Scratch. Tap. Breath. Heartbeat. Scratch. He sat in row G, seat 12. He kept his eyes focused on the paper, his breathing regulated in a slow 4-count rhythm. In 2, 3, 4. Out 2, 3, 4. Fukasaku's teachings echoed in his mind. The world screams, Izuku. You cannot silence the world. You must become the void that accepts the sound without rippling. He focused on the questions. They were difficult, but manageable. He had spent years analyzing quirks, physics, and hero laws in his notebooks. Without the distraction of anxiety, suppressed now by the discipline of the sage, his mind was sharp. He solved the quadratic equations. He translated the English text. He analyzed the ethical dilemma of a hostage situation with cold, logical precision. Bakugo was sitting 3 rows ahead. Izuku didn't need to look up to know it. He could hear the specific, slightly elevated heart rate of his childhood friend. He could smell the faint trace of nitroglycerin that always clung to Katsuki's skin, a scent like burnt sugar and danger. Katsuki was writing furiously, his pencil digging into the paper with unnecessary force. He's anxious too, Izuku realized, a thought that would have seemed impossible a year ago. He's terrified of failing, just like everyone else. He just wears his fear as anger. Izuku finished the paper with 10 minutes to spare. He placed his pencil down. The click of wood against the desk sounded like a gavel strike in his ears. He closed his eyes, folding his hands in his lap, and waited. The orientation for the practical exam was held in an even larger auditorium. The lights were dim, the air conditioning humming a low bass note that vibrated in Izuku's chest. Everybody say hey. Present Mix's voice was a physical assault. Even without his quirk fully active, the voice hero had a projection that rattled teeth. Izuku winced, instinctively bringing his hands up to cover his ears before remembering himself and lowering them. He saw other students glancing at him, wondering why the boy with the messy green hair looked like he was in pain. Welcome to my live show. Today, you examinees will be conducting 10-minute mock city battles. The screen behind the hero lit up, displaying the layout of the battle centers. You can bring whatever you want. If you need crutches, bring them. If you need a support item, bring it. But you only have 10 minutes to wreak havoc. Izuku listened intently, filtering out the unnecessary yes and rock and roll references. Robots, he noted. 3 types. 1 point for speed, 2 for stealth, 3 for power. We are being graded on combat ability. He frowned slightly. Combat against machines. His training with Fukasaku had been almost entirely focused on organic combat, feeling the intent of a living opponent, sensing the flow of biological energy. Robots had no intent. They had no spirit. They were cold, hard metal. I won't be able to sense their attacks before they happen, Izuku realized. My danger sense relies on malice or biological aggression. A machine has either. I'll have to rely on hearing the servos and motors. Excuse me, may I ask a question? A hand shot up in the middle of the auditorium. A tall boy with glasses and a severe haircut stood up, the spotlight catching the gleam of his lenses. There are 4 types of villains on this handout. The boy shouted, pointing a stiff finger at the paper. If this is a printing error, you should be ashamed. We are here to seek guidance from Japan's top heroes. He then spun around, pointing directly at Izuku. And you? The one with the curly hair. Izuku blinked, the sudden attention feeling like a spotlight burn. And me? You've been closing your eyes and breathing rhythmically the entire time. It's distracting. If you're here on a sightseeing trip, you should leave immediately. The auditorium rippled with muffled laughter. Izuku felt the heat rise in his cheeks. Old habits died hard. The urge to shrink away was strong. But he gripped the fabric of his trousers. He felt the phantom weight of the stone-toed statue on his back. Stillness, he told himself. Do not ripple. Izuku spoke, his voice not loud, but carrying a strange resonance due to his breath control. I am visualizing the simulation. Breathing helps me focus. I apologize if my preparation disturbs you. The boy with glasses paused, seemingly taken aback that Izuku didn't stutter an apology, or get angry. He adjusted his glasses. I see. Visualization. A valid technique, I suppose? He sat down stiffly. President Mike waved his hands. Okay. Examinee 7111. Nice catch. The fourth villain is 0 points. It's just an obstacle. A gimmick. If you see it, run away. Run away, Izuku thought. The opposite of standing still. Battle Center B. The bus ride to the testing ground was tense. The air was thick with the smell of sweat, adrenaline, and cheap deodorant. Izuku stood near the back, clutching the strap of his newly sewn costume, a sturdy green tracksuit reinforced with durable fabric pads, designed to withstand the internal pressure of senjutsu. He stepped off the bus and stared up at the gate. It was massive, a towering monolith of steel marking the boundary between the mundane world and the hero world. He scanned the crowd. He saw the girl from the entrance, Uraraka. She was taking deep breaths, looking like she might be sick. I should wish her luck, Izuku thought. She helped me earlier. He took a step toward her. Stop right there. A hand chopped the air in front of his chest. It was the glasses boy again. He loomed over Izuku, his engines on his calves humming softly. Are you planning to distract that girl? He accused. She is trying to focus. You are clearly looking to sabotage other examinees. No, Izuku started. You have a strange vibe, the boy said, narrowing his eyes behind the lenses. You aren't wearing any support gear. You don't have a mutation-type quirk visible. Yet you carry yourself, strangely. Are you taking this seriously? Izuku looked at the boy's engines. Recipro burst potential? High speed, high torque. I'm taking it very seriously, Izuku said quietly. More than you know. Start. President Mick's voice boomed from the top of a watchtower, cracking the tension like an egg. What are you waiting for? There are no countdowns in real battles. Run. Run. Die. I mean, go. The crowd surged forward. It was a stampede of quirks, people turning into blades, firing lasers, growing giant limbs. The glasses boy Ida shot forward with a burst of exhaust, leaving a trail of smoke. Within seconds, Izuku was the only one left standing at the open gate. The dust from the stampede settled around his green sneakers. He stood perfectly still, his arms hanging loose by his sides, his eyes closed. From the observation room high above the mock city, the teachers of UA watched the monitors. We have a lively bunch this year, Midnight commented, swirling a glass of juice. That explosive kid in Center A is a beast. But, look at Center B. On the screen, a lone green dot remained at the start line. Is he forfeiting? A hero with a blockhead asked. He hasn't moved. Shoto Aizawa, standing in the back with his capture scarf loose around his neck, narrowed his tired eyes. He zoomed in on the monitor. He's not forfeiting, Aizawa muttered. Look at his posture. He's grounding himself. In a timed exam? President Mike asked, leaning over. Bold strategy, listener. Let's see if it pays off. Back at the gate, Izuku was fighting a war inside his own body. Too much noise, he thought, gritting his teeth. The city simulation was nothing like the forest. In the forest, the natural energy was pure, flowing from the trees and the earth. Here, the ground was concrete. The air was filled with exhaust fumes and the static of electricity. The nature energy was thin, polluted by the artificial environment. It's harder to gather, Izuku realized. It's like trying to drink water through a straw that's full of sand. He clasped his hands together in the prayer seal Fukasaku had taught him. Clap. He shut out the sounds of explosions echoing from within the city. He shut out the screams of 2 points. And smash! He visualized the roots of the weeds cracking through the pavement. He visualized the wind flowing between the buildings. Connect, he commanded his cells. Draw it in. It was slow. Agonizingly slow. 1 minute passed. Inside the city, Ochako Uraraka touched a robot, sending it floating into the sky before releasing it to crash. She wiped sweat from her brow. 10 points. I need more. 2 minutes passed. Tenya Ida used a high-speed kick to decapitate a 3-pointer. Civilians evacuated. Villain neutralized. Efficient. 3 minutes passed. At the gate, Izuku's skin began to crawl. The familiar sensation of the toad oil, though he wasn't using any now, ghosted over his flesh. The natural energy of the area, sparse as it was, began to pool into him. It felt heavy. Concrete heavy. Careful, he warned himself. This energy is rough. It's jagged. Orange pigmentation began to bleed out from the corners of his eyes, stretching back toward his ears like theatrical makeup. His iris turned a brilliant, glowing yellow. The rectangular pupil formed, snapping horizontal. His muscles swelled slightly, compacting, becoming denser than steel. The air pressure around him dropped, kicking up a small swirl of dust. Izuku opened his eyes. The world had changed. He could feel the vibrations of every battle in the city. He could sense the magnetic fields of the robots. He could feel the panic of the students. 3 minutes gone, Izuku whispered. His voice was deeper, vibrating in his own chest. 7 minutes remaining? Time to hop. He bent his knees. Crack. The concrete beneath his sneakers didn't just crack. It spider-webbed for 10 feet in every direction. With a sound like a cannon blast, Izuku launched himself. He didn't run. He bounded. One leap took him 50 meters, clearing the entrance buildings in a single arc. The wind roared in his ears, but he didn't hear the roar. He felt the aerodynamic flow. He landed in the middle of a street where 3 2-point robots were cornering a student with the tail. The student, Ojiro, was bracing for impact. Damn it, too many! Izuku landed between Ojiro and the robots. The impact of his landing shattered the asphalt, creating a shockwave that made the robots stumble. Ojiro blinked. What the? The middle robot, a serpentine machine with drills, lunged at Izuku. Izuku didn't dodge. He didn't even raise his fists in a boxing stance. He stood with his palm open, arm extended loosely. Frog kata, phantom strike. He thrust his palm forward. He stopped his hand a full foot away from the robot's metal plating. To Ojiro's eyes, Izuku missed, but the air in front of Izuku's palm distorted. A compressed cannonball of natural energy slammed into the robot. The metal didn't dent. It buckled inward as if crushed by a giant invisible hydraulic press. The robot was blasted backward, crashing through a brick wall 20 feet away. The other 2 robots swiveled toward him. Izuku spun, his movements fluid and liquid. He swept his leg in a low arc. Again, he didn't touch them. The wind pressure generated by the kick acted like a blade, slicing the legs off both robots cleanly. They collapsed into sparks and scrap. 6 points, Izuku said calmly. He looked at Ojiro. Are you injured? Ojiro stared, his tail twitching. No. Dude, what is that quirk? Is it telekinesis? Wind? Something like that, Izuku said. He felt the energy inside him turbulent. The concrete energy is hard to control. It wants to explode out of me. I have to be fast. He leaped again, vanishing onto the rooftops. Observation room. Whoa, President Mike whistled. Did you see that? He didn't touch them. Emitter type? Midnight guessed. Short-range shockwaves? No, All Might said softly. He was leaning forward, gripping the railing. Look at his eyes. Look at his movement. He isn't emitting power. He's utilizing the atmosphere. It's martial arts, but on a level I've never seen. He wasted 3 minutes standing still, Aizawa noted, unimpressed but intrigued. But in the last 60 seconds he has destroyed 12 robots. He's catching up. However, Aizawa tapped the screen. He's on a timer within a timer. Look at his face. The pigmentation is spreading. He looks like he's straining to hold something in. He has a limit, The principal, Nizu, squeaked from his chair. A high-risk, high-reward power. Very interesting. The 6-minute mark. Izuku was a blur of green and orange. He moved through the mock city like a pinball. He found a cluster of one-pointers swarming a building. He ran up the vertical wall, his chakra-enhanced feet gripping the brick, and leaped off, raining down open palm strikes that crumpled the machines like soda cans. 20 points. He found a 3-pointer, a massive tank-treaded beast firing rubber missiles. He caught a missile in midair. Caught it. He spun his body, redirecting the kinetic energy, and threw the missile back at the robot at double the speed. 23 points. But he was tired. It wasn't physical fatigue. His muscles felt like they could lift a truck. It was mental exhaustion. Holding on to the natural energy required absolute focus. Every second he moved, the energy tried to leak out or overwhelm him. The stone-toed curse was a constant whisper in the back of his mind. My concentration is slipping, Izuku thought as he landed on a lamppost, perching on it like a gargoyle. The noise is getting to me. 45 points. Someone shouted a street away. It was Bakugo. Kakin is ahead, Izuku noted. I have 32. It might be enough to pass, but it's borderline. He needed one big score. Then, the ground jumped. It wasn't a vibration. It was an earthquake. Buildings swayed. Glass shattered. The siren wailed, a sound that pierced even Izuku's regulated senses, causing him to wince in pain. Warning! Warning! From the center of the city, a shadow eclipsed the sun, the 0-pointer. It was colossal. It towered over the tallest skyscrapers of the mock city. Its hand was the size of a house. It smashed a building simply by moving forward, debris raining down like hail. The psychological effect was instant. The examinees, who moments ago were confident heroes, turned into terrified children. Run! That's not a gimmick! That's murder! Get out of the way! The stampede reversed. Students fled toward the exit, pushing past each other. Izuku stood on the lamppost, swaying with the tremors. Run! His instincts screamed. You have 32 points. If you survive, you might pass. If you fight that, you die. The natural energy in his body was dwindling. He had maybe 2 minutes of sage mode left before he burned out, and was left as a quirkless, exhausted boy in the middle of a war zone. He turned to follow the crowd. Ouch! The sound was faint. It was buried under the crashing of masonry, and the roar of the robot's engines. But Izuku heard it. He stopped. His sensory radar pinged. A biological signature. Distress. Pain. He turned his head. Through the dust cloud, 300 meters away, he saw her. Uraraka. She was pinned. A piece of rubble had trapped her leg. She was trying to lift it, but her strength was failing. The 0-pointer was looming directly over her. Its massive tank treads were grinding the street to dust, inching closer. Izuku looked at the robot. Then at the girl. It's too big, logic said. You can't destroy that. You don't have one for all. You aren't All Might. But then he remembered the first day in the forest. Movement is not the only strength. Sometimes the greatest power comes from sitting still, but sometimes you had to move. Izuku didn't think. The analysis paralysis that had plagued him his whole life evaporated. He moved. The climax. Uraraka coughed, the dust choking her. She clawed at the concrete slab. It was too heavy. She looked up. The metal underbelly of the 0-pointer was descending. A giant metal fist was winding up to smash the street in front of it to clear a path. I'm going to die, she thought. I'm going to die in an exam. She squeezed her eyes shut. Boom. A sonic boom shattered the air. She opened her eyes. A figure had landed between her and the robot. He was crouching, one hand on the ground. Green lightning, no, not lightning, wind, was spiraling around him. Midoriya? She gasped. Izuku stood up. He didn't look at her. He was staring up at the mechanical titan. His eyes were fully yellow now. The orange pigmentation had spread, covering his cheeks in a mask of natural power. The veins in his neck were bulging. I have one shot, Izuku thought. I can't punch this thing back. It weighs thousands of tons. Physics is against me. He took a deep breath. He drew in every scrap of energy remaining in the immediate vicinity. The dust on the ground swirled toward him. The zero-pointer's fist came down. It was a mass of steel the size of a bus, descending at terminal velocity. Izuku didn't jump to meet it. He planted his feet. He sank into a wide stance, rooting himself into the earth. Senpo, Kawasaki might say Jart, frog kata. He waited. The fist was 50 feet away, 30 feet, 10 feet. The wind pressure alone cracked the pavement around Uraraka. She screamed. Extreme! Izuku roared, his voice echoing with a harmonic distortion. He thrust both palms upward. Air palm! He didn't touch the robot. A massive, visible column of compressed air erupted from his hands. It wasn't a laser. It was a cannonball of atmospheric pressure. The air blast met the robot's fist. Crack boom! The sound was deafening. The laws of physics wept. The descending fist hit the column of air and stopped. The kinetic energy had nowhere to go. It reverberated back up the robot's arm. Metal shrieked. The massive arm of the zero-pointer crumpled like tin foil. The shockwave traveled up the limb, blowing out the shoulder joint with a shower of sparks and oil. The force of the blast didn't stop the robot's momentum entirely, but it knocked the Titan off balance. The massive machine tipped backward, its internal gyroscope failing. It crashed. The Earth jumped 10 feet into the air. The zero-pointer lay smoking, its arm destroyed, its chassis groaning. Silence fell over the battle center. Izuku stood there, his hands still raised. Then he coughed. A spray of blood hit the pavement. The orange pigmentation vanished instantly. His eyes returned to their deep green. His knees buckled. Midoriya! Uraraka scrambled out from under the rubble, which had been shifted by the vibrations, and crawled toward him. Izuku fell onto his back. Every muscle fiber in his body was tearing. He had drawn too much. He had tried to become the ocean when he was still just a cup. Is it safe? Izuku rasped, staring at the sky. You destroyed it, Uraraka cried, hovering her hands over him, unsure where to touch. You saved me. 1 minute left. Present Mick's voice echoed, sounding shocked. Izuku tried to stand. I need points. I only have 32. He managed to lift his head. He saw the glasses boy Ida, staring at him from an alleyway, mouth agape. He saw the other students emerging from cover, looking at the fallen giant and then at the small, broken boy. Time's up, the siren wailed. The exam was over. Izuku let his head drop back against the concrete. The exhaustion took him. The darkness was quiet. Finally quiet. The infirmary. When Izuku woke up, he smelled antiseptic and gummies. You're awake. Good. Recovery girl was sitting on a stool, spinning slightly. You reckless child. I haven't seen a body this stressed since All Might in his prime. Izuku tried to sit up, but his arms felt like lead. The exam, did I pass? That's not for me to say, the old woman said, handing him a cup of tea. But physically? You're lucky. Your muscle fibers were strained to the breaking point. And there's something else, your cells. They were vibrating. Natural energy, Izuku croaked. Whatever you call it, be careful, she warned. If you had held that energy for 10 seconds longer, I suspect you would have suffered permanent petrification. You were turning into a statue, boy. Izuku looked at his arm. There was a small patch of skin near his elbow that felt rough, callous. A reminder. I saved her though, Izuku whispered. Yes, recovery girl softened. You did. Now eat these gummies. You need the sugar. The week of silence. The week following the exam was a different kind of torture. It wasn't physical. It was the torture of waiting. Izuku sat at dinner, staring at his katsudan. Izuku? Inko touched his hand. You're vibrating again. Sorry, Mom. He stopped tapping his foot. He had failed. He was sure of it. 32 points. That wasn't enough. People usually scored 40 or 50. He had wasted the first 3 minutes sitting still. He had wasted the last minute saving someone who didn't give points. I sat still, he thought bitterly. And the world moved on without me. He went to his room and looked at the empty space where his All Might posters used to be. He had taken some down to make room for meditation mats. He pulled the stone toad out of his pocket. Did I do it right, Fukasaku-sensei? He asked the stone. Or was I just a frog in a well? the letter. It arrived on a Tuesday, Inko screamed. Izuku! It's here! From Ue! She threw the envelope at him like it was a grenade and ran to the bathroom to hide. Izuku sat at his desk. He stared at the wax seal. He tore it open. A metal disc fell out. A hologram projection flickered to life. I am here! As a projection, Izuku jumped. All Might? The number one hero filled the small room with his presence. He was wearing a yellow suit that clashed with everything. Young Midoriya! You have been waiting. Sorry for the delay. I had to do a lot of paperwork. Guess what? I am a teacher at Ue now. Izuku's jaw dropped. A teacher? Yes. Now, let's get to the brass tacks. The exam results. All Might pointed at the camera. You scored 32 villain points. A respectable number, but on the lower end of the passing spectrum. Many students scored higher. Izuku's heart sank. He looked down at his lap. I knew it. However, All Might's voice dropped an octave. The playfulness vanished. You are looking at the screen thinking you failed. You are thinking, I didn't hit enough robots. But listen to me, young Midoriya. What is a hero? The video cut away. It showed the footage from the exam. It showed Uraraka trapped. It showed the other students running away. And it showed Izuku. The boy who had sat still for 3 minutes. The boy who looked small. It showed him planting his feet against the Titan. It showed the blast of air that defied logic. This is a job about risking your life to walk the talk. All Might shouted. The video shifted again. It showed Uraraka in the negotiation room after the exam. Please! She was begging President Mike. Give him my points. He saved me. He wasted his time to save me. I heard him say he needed points. Please! Izuku felt tears pricking his eyes. She tried to give me her points? You cannot give away points, All Might said, returning to the screen. But you don't need them. A scoreboard appeared. The entrance exam is not just about destroying villains. A hero course that rejects those who save others is a sham. We look for the spirit of self-sacrifice. Izuku Midoriya. Villain points 32. Rescue points 60. 60 rescue points. All Might shouted, throwing his arms wide. For a grand total of 92 points. You passed with flying colors. Izuku couldn't breathe. The tears finally spilled over. He covered his mouth to stifle the sob. You found your own way, All Might said softly, his blue eyes piercing through the hologram. You didn't take my power. You built your own. And you used it to save a life. That is the essence of a hero. All Might extended a hand toward the camera. Come, young Midoriya. This is your hero academia. The hologram faded. Izuku sat in the silence of his room. He wiped his eyes. He took a deep breath, and for the first time in a week, the knot in his chest loosened. He looked out the window toward the mountains where the old toad sage lived. I'm going, he whispered. I'm going to be a hero. The door to Class 1A was massive. To the average student, it was simply a large barrier, perhaps designed to accommodate students with gigantification quirks or mutation types. But to Izuku Midoriya, standing before it with his breath held in his chest, the door was a vibrating membrane. He could hear them inside. 19 heartbeats. He could hear the chaotic rhythm of excited conversation, the scrape of chairs, and the distinct, rapid-fire clicking of engines. Tenya Ida was already there. He could hear the low, simmering thrum of something volatile. Bakugo was there too. Izuku adjusted the strap of his yellow backpack. He closed his eyes for a brief moment, finding the center that Fukasaku had drilled into him. The noise is just information, the old toad had said. Do not let it drown you. Surf upon it. Izuku opened his eyes. The panic that usually would have seized him, the old Deku panic, was present, but it was distant. It was a fly buzzing in another room. He had stared down a giant robot and channeled the wrath of the wind. A door was just a door. He slid it open. The noise hit him physically. Don't put your feet on the desk. Ha! Don't tell me what to do, Four Eyes. It is disrespectful to the upperclassmen who sat here before us. And to the craftsmen who made the desk. Izuku stepped in. The air inside the classroom smelled of floor wax and teenage hormones. Oh! It's you! Izuku turned. Ochako Uraraka was beaming at him, her round face flushed with excitement. The plain-looking boy. You passed. I was so worried about your injuries. Yes, Izuku managed, a smile finding its way to his face. Recovery girl is amazing. I'm Tenya Ida. The tall boy with glasses marched over, his hand extended like a robot's. I misjudged you at the entrance exam. You perceived the true nature of the test, that it was about protection, not just destruction. I salute you. I didn't really perceive it. Izuku scratched his cheek. I just heard you needed help. Get out of my way, Deku. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Izuku looked past Ida's shoulder. Katsuki Bakugo was sitting at a desk, his feet resting casually on the surface. His red eyes were narrowed, fixed on Izuku with a mixture of confusion and intense suspicion. Kaken, Izuku nodded, keeping his voice level. Don't give me that calm crap, Bakugo growled, his voice low. How did you do it? How did a pebble like you trick the judges? I didn't trick anyone, Izuku said. He didn't retreat. He felt the vibration of Bakugo's anger. It was sharp, jagged, like broken glass. But he also felt the confusion underneath. I worked for it. If you're here to make friends, you can pack up and leave. The voice came from the floor. The class froze. Izuku had heard the heartbeat in the hallway a full minute ago, but even he was startled by the visual. A man in a yellow sleeping bag was lying just outside the doorway like a discarded chrysalis. The man stood up, shedding the bag. He looked like he hadn't slept in a week. His hair was messy, his eyes bloodshot and dry. It took you 8 seconds to quiet down, the man said, checking a stopwatch. Time is a limited resource. You kids aren't rational enough. He walked to the podium, his presence heavy and oppressive. I'm your homeroom teacher, Shota Aizawa. Teacher? The class thought collectively. He looks like a hobo. Put these on. Aizawa pulled a gym uniform out of his sleeping bag. And meet me on the P grounds. The P grounds. The sky was a brilliant, cloudless blue. The sun beat down on the dirt track. It was a beautiful day, filled with natural energy. Izuku stood in the line of students, taking deep, rhythmic breaths. He could feel the sun warming his skin, feeding the small reservoir of senjutsu he kept dormant. A quirk assessment test? The class shouted in unison. What about the entrance ceremony? The guidance counselor meeting? Uraraka asked. If you want to be a hero, you don't have time for such leisurely events, Aizawa said, turning his back to them. Yuri's selling point is freedom of style. That applies to the teachers as well. He turned back, his dark eyes scanning the group. Softball throw. Standing long jump. 50-meter dash. Endurance running. Grip strength. Upper body training. Seated toe touch. Sit-ups. You did these in middle school, right? But you were prohibited from using your quirks. Aizawa tossed the softball lightly in his hand. The country still insists on using averages of students without quirks. It's not rational. The Ministry of Education is procrastinating. He looked at Bakugo. Bakugo, you finished first in the practical exam. In middle school, what was your best result for the softball throw? 67 meters. Try it with your quirk. Bakugo stepped into the circle. A predatory grin spread across his face. He stretched his arms. You can do whatever you want as long as you stay in the circle, Aizawa instructed. Bakugo wound up. Dai! Boom! The explosion was deafening. A shockwave of heat and dust rolled over the class. Izuku didn't flinch, but he felt the sudden displacement of air against his skin. The ball shot into the sky like a mortar shell, leaving a trail of smoke. Aizawa held up his device. 705.2 meters. Whoa! 700 meters? Kaminari gasped. That looks like fun! Mina Ashido cheered. Fun? Aizawa's voice cut through the excitement like a razor blade. You have 3 years to become a hero. You think it's going to be all fun and games? He lowered the device. His hair seemed to float slightly, and the air around him grew heavy with intent. Right. The one with the lowest score across all 8 events will be judged to have no potential, and will be expelled. The silence that followed was absolute. Expelled? Uraraka cried. It's the first day. That's too unreasonable. Natural disasters, big accidents, selfish villains, Aizawa listed, his eyes bored. Calamities whose time or place can't be predicted. Japan is covered in unreasonableness. Heroes are the ones who reverse those situations. If you wanted to hang out at a burger joint after school, you're in the wrong place. Izuku swallowed hard. Lowest score gets expelled. He looked at his hands. Without Sage Mode, he was just a physically fit teenager. He had muscles, yes. Hauling boulders and meditating under waterfalls had given him a swimmer's build. But compared to engines, explosions, and zero gravity, he was at a disadvantage. I can't maintain Sage Mode for the whole test, Izuku analyzed rapidly. It takes time to gather. If I try to gather for every event, I'll waste too much time. Aizawa-sensei hates wasted time. I have to choose my moment. He had to rely on his base physical stats for the minor tests, and save the senjutsu for the one that mattered most. Test 1, 50-meter dash. Ida and a girl with frog-like features, Tsuyu Ajiri, were up first. Ida, 3.04 seconds. Ajiri, 5.58 seconds. Ribbit, Ajiri noted as she landed. Izuku felt a strange kinship with her instantly. The way she moved, it was efficient. Then it was Izuku's turn. He was paired against Bakugo. Red Eat. The robot drone intoned. Izuku crouched. He didn't use Sage Mode. He focused on his explosive power, muscle power, start, explosive speed. Bakugo launched himself backward with explosions, propelling himself forward. Izuku sprinted. He ran with perfect form, arms pumping, breathing synchronized with his steps. Bakugo crossed the line, 4.13 seconds. Izuku crossed the line, 6.02 seconds. TCH, Bakugo spat as Izuku slowed down. Slow as always, Deku, Izuku panted. 6.02 was a great time for a normal human. But here? It was average. Test 2, grip strength. Izuku gripped the device. He squeezed until his knuckles turned white. 56 kilograms. Beside him, a tall, multi-armed student named Shoji clamped down. 540 kilograms. Wow! Mineta squeaked. He's a gorilla. Izuku looked at his score. It was normal. Painfully normal. Test 3, standing long jump. Aoyama used his naval laser to propel himself across the sandbox. Bakugo used explosions. Izuku stood at the edge. He hesitated. Should I use it? No, not yet. I need to save the energy. He jumped. It was a good jump, clearing the sand mostly, but compared to the students who flew over the pit entirely, it looked pathetic. Test 4, repeated side steps. Mineta was the king here, bouncing off his own balls. Izuku moved fast, his agility high from dodging Fukasaku's staff for months, but he was merely good. The sun was climbing higher. Izuku could feel Aizawa's eyes on him. The teacher was watching him like a hawk. Or rather, like a cat watching a mouse that refused to run. Aizawa checked his clipboard. Midoriya Izuku. Entrance exam, rescue points high. Villain points low. The footage showed massive power. Why isn't he using it? Aizawa wondered, irritated. Is he underestimating the test? Is he saving it? Or is he strictly a one-trick pony who breaks every time he fires? Test 5, ball throw. This was it. The make-or-break moment. Uraraka went up. She touched the ball. Infinity. The class cheered. Midoriya, Aizawa called. Izuku stepped into the circle. His heart was pounding, but he forced it to slow down. 4 count in. 4 count out. He held the ball. He needed Sage Mode. Without it, he would throw 40 or 50 meters. He would be expelled. But he couldn't just turn it on. He needed to gather. Izuku dropped the ball at his feet. The class murmured. Did he drop it? Is he giving up? Then Izuku sat down. He crossed his legs into the lotus position. He clasped his hands together in a specific seal, fingers interlocked, thumbs pressing together. He closed his eyes. What the hell is he doing? Kirishima asked, tilting his head. Is he meditating? He's stalling, Bakugo growled, his fists clenching. He's trying to get out of it. Aizawa stared. The irritation in his chest spiked. This kid. 10 seconds passed. 20 seconds. 30 seconds. The class grew restless. Ida looked concerned. Midoriya! The test is timed implicitly. You must act. Izuku didn't move. He sat like a stone statue. Inside his mind, however, a storm was brewing. He was pulling the heat from the dirt, pulling the wind from the air, pulling the latent energy of the pea grounds. Faster, he urged himself. I need to get faster. He felt the familiar sensation, the heavy feeling in his limbs. The world sharpened. He could hear the worms moving in the soil beneath the circle. 40 seconds. That's enough, Aizawa snapped. The teacher's scarf shot out. It wrapped around Izuku's shoulders, yanking him slightly. Izuku's eyes snapped open. Aizawa was glaring at him, his hair standing on end, his eyes glowing red. He was using his quirk, erasure. I don't know what you're planning, Aizawa hissed, pulling Izuku closer. But Yui is not a monastery. In a real battle, if you sit down for 40 seconds you're dead. Your teammates are dead. The civilians are dead. He tightened the scarf. I saw your entrance exam. You have power. Why the theatrical delay? Are you mocking the test? Aizawa waited for the feeling of the student's quirk vanishing. He waited for the boy to feel the sudden emptiness of erasure. But Izuku didn't flinch. Instead, Izuku looked up. And for the first time, Aizawa saw it clearly. The orange pigmentation around the eyes. The yellow irises. The horizontal, goat-like pupils. And Aizawa realized with a jolt of genuine shock, nothing happened. His erasure was active. He was looking right at the boy. But the transformation didn't fade. The pressure radiating from the boy didn't vanish. Teacher, Izuku said. His voice was different, layered, resonant. Please let me go. The energy is difficult to hold. Aizawa's eyes widened. It's not a quirk? No, Izuku said. Aizawa deactivated his quirk, his hair falling back down. He loosened the scarf, stepping back, his logical mind racing. Not a quirk? A mutation? No, he changed. A support item? He has none. What is this? Hurry up, Aizawa commanded, masking his confusion with sternness. Throw the ball. Izuku stood up. The movement was stiff, heavy. His skin felt like it was made of lead. He picked up the ball. To him, it felt light as a feather. He looked at the field. He saw the distance. Senpo, Kawasaki might. He didn't wind up like a pitcher. He stepped forward, planting his lead foot, and thrust his palm forward, the ball sitting in the center of his hand. He pushed. Go! He released the ball. But he didn't just release it. He expelled a concentrated burst of natural energy from his palm at the exact moment of release. It acted like a railgun. Boom! The sound barrier broke. A cone of white cloud erupted from his hand. The ball vanished instantly, tearing a hole through the air. The wind pressure knocked Mineta over and sent Ida stumbling back. The ball soared. It went up, and up, and up. Izuku stood in the circle, smoke rising from his hand. The orange pigmentation began to recede, fading like steam. As it left, the exhaustion hit him like a truck. His knees buckled. He caught himself, panting heavily. Aizawa looked at the device. 706 meters. A tiny smile crept onto Izuku's face. 1 meter more than Kaken. He threw it over 700 meters. Uraraka cheered. Just like Bakugo, but without an explosion. Ciro added. That was just air pressure? Aizawa turned the screen to show the class. 706 meters. Izuku wiped the sweat from his forehead. His thumb was throbbing. Using that much nature energy in a single burst was rough on the joints. DKU. The screen was primal. Bakugo launched himself from the crowd. Explosions crackled in his palms. His face was twisted in pure, unadulterated rage. You bastard! You told me you were quirkless. You told me you were empty. What was that? Are you mocking me? He was fast. He was going to tackle Izuku. Izuku was too drained to dodge. He flinched, raising his arms. Thwip. The scarf wrapped around Bakugo, stopping him midair. It bound his arms and mouth, snuffing out the explosions. GHH. And then GHH. Bakugo struggled, glaring at Aizawa. Stop using your quirk, Aizawa said, his eyes glowing red again. You're giving me dry eye. He released Bakugo, who stumbled back, seething. We're wasting time, Aizawa muttered. Prepare for the next event. Bakugo glared at Izuku. We aren't done, he mouthed. Izuku looked away. He knew they weren't. The rest of the tests were a blur for Izuku. The massive expenditure of the ball throw had drained his reserves. He did average on the sit-ups and toe touches. By the end of the day, the sun was setting. The students gathered around Aizawa for the results. I won't bother reading them out, Aizawa said. It's a waste of time. Just look at the hologram. A screen projected into the air. 1. Momo Yaoyorozu. 2. Shoto Todoroki. 3. Katsuki Bakugo. 18. Toru Hagakure. 19. Minoru Mineta. 20. Izuku Midoriya. Izuku stared at his name at the bottom. His heart stopped. Last place. Of course. Even with the 706-meter throw, his other scores were average. Everyone else had used their quirks for almost every test. He had only used Sage Mode for one. I'm expelled, Izuku whispered. The dream was over. One day. He lasted one day. He felt Uraraka's pitying gaze. He felt Bakugo's vindictive stare. Aizawa clicked a button, and the screen vanished. By the way, the expulsion was a lie. Huh! The class froze. It was a rational deception to draw out the upper limits of your capabilities, Aizawa said with a terrifyingly creepy grin. What? The class screamed. Of course it was a lie, Yaoyorozu sighed, hand on her chest. It was obvious if you thought about it. No, it wasn't. The rest of the class thought. Izuku's knees gave out. He slumped to the ground, relief washing over him so hard he felt dizzy. I'm safe, Midoriya. Izuku looked up. Aizawa was standing over him. The creepy grin was gone, replaced by a cold, serious expression. Come with me to the faculty office. Take your stuff. The warning. The faculty office was quiet. Aizawa sat at his desk, sorting through papers. Izuku stood in front of him, clutching his backpack straps. You have zero potential, Aizawa said. Izuku flinched. But you said the expulsion was a lie? The expulsion was a lie. My assessment of your current state is not. Aizawa spun his chair around. I looked at your file. Quirkless. And yet you blew a hole in the sky today. You told me it wasn't a quirk. It's a technique, Izuku explained, his voice trembling slightly. It involves gathering natural energy from the environment. It's called senjutsu. Senjutsu, Aizawa repeated, tasting the word. I've heard rumors of old martial arts like that. Never seen it real. He leaned forward. Here is the problem, Midoriya. To use this senjutsu, you sat on the ground for 42 seconds. Izuku nodded. I need to be still to gather the energy. If I move, the balance breaks. 42 seconds, Aizawa said again. In a villain attack, people die in 1 second. While you were sitting there, staring at your navel, 3 civilians would have been killed. A villain would have cut your throat. He pointed a finger at Izuku. You are a cannon that takes 5 minutes to load. You have tremendous power, maybe even more than All Might in raw output if that wind blast was any indication. But power means nothing if you can't use it instantly. Izuku looked down at his red shoes. I know. I'm trying to get faster. Try harder, Aizawa said harshly. If you can't fight without a minute of meditation, you will die. And worse, you will get others killed. He handed Izuku a sheet of paper, the curriculum schedule. However, Aizawa softened, just a fraction. You proved you have guts. You threw that ball knowing the drawback. You have the will. He stood up. Don't make me regret keeping you, Midoriya. Figure out a way to load the cannon while you're running. Dismissed. The walk home. Izuku walked out of the school gates as the sun dipped below the horizon. He was exhausted. His body ached. Deku! Izuku stopped. He didn't turn around. Kaken! Bakugo stomped up to him. He didn't look angry anymore. He looked unsettled. Which was almost scarier. You said it wasn't a quirk, Bakugo said. You said it was a technique. It is, Izuku said, turning to face him. I learned it. In the mountains. So. Bakugo's voice shook. So anyone could do it? If they tried hard enough? Izuku paused. Fukasaku had told him that without the specific genetic mutation that made him a vessel, the oil would turn a normal person into a stone frog instantly. No, Izuku said truthfully. Only I can. My body is different. It's a mutation, but not a quirk. I was born to hold this energy. Bakugo stared at him. He seemed to be processing this. It wasn't that Izuku had been hiding a quirk. It was that Izuku, the useless pebble, had found a weapon that only he could wield. You're still a pebble, Bakugo spat, though the venom was less potent than usual. And I'm going to crush you. Don't think you've won just because you threw a ball. Bakugo turned and walked away, hands in his pockets. Izuku watched him go. Midoriya-kun, Uraraka and Ida were running toward him. We waited for you. Uraraka smiled. You want to walk to the station together? That teacher was quite frightening. Ida adjusted his glasses. But you survived. Excellent work, Izuku smiled. The noise of the city was picking up again. Trains, cars, people. But for the first time, he didn't feel like covering his ears. He had friends. He had a path. And he had a goal. Load the cannon while running, Izuku thought, clenching his fist. I have to learn to gather energy in motion. He looked at his hand. I have to become the storm, not just the mountain. The locker room smelled of industrial cleaner and nervous anticipation. Izuku Midoriya stood in front of his open locker, staring at the green bundle inside. It wasn't just fabric, it was an identity. He pulled the jumpsuit out. The material was thick, a specialized weave he had requested in his design forms, something durable enough to withstand the expansion of his muscles when natural energy flooded his system, yet flexible enough not to restrict the fluid movements of the frog kata. He pulled the hood up. It had long ears that mimicked a rabbit, a nod to All Might's hair tufts, but in the mirror, with his slightly wider stance and the green tint, he looked more amphibious than mammalian. He wore heavy, specialized gloves with open palms, designed to allow direct contact between his skin and the air for energy absorption. Whoa, Midoriya! That looks super practical. Izuku turned. Eijiro Kirishima was grinning, shirtless save for some gear-like shoulder pads. It fits your vibe. You know, the whole martial artist of the mountains thing. Thanks, Kirishima-kun, Izuku smiled nervously. Yours looks manly. Right. Across the room, Katsuki Bakugo slammed his locker shut. The sound was like a gunshot, silencing the chatter instantly. He wore a black tank top with a chaotic orange X across the chest, and massive, grenade-shaped gauntlets on his forearms. He didn't look at Izuku. He just stared at the door, radiating a heat that Izuku could feel from 10 feet away. The air around Bakugo vibrated with a low-frequency hum of aggression. He's waiting, Izuku thought, his stomach tightening. He's been waiting for this since the ball throw. Ground beta. It's time for battle training. All Might stood at the entrance to the mock city, his cape fluttering dramatically in the wind. Even in his teaching role, he was larger than life. Costumes are the first step to becoming a hero. And look at you all. You look cool. Now, shall we get started, zygotes? The class gathered around, showing off their gear. Uraraka approached Izuku, rubbing the back of her helmet. Deku-kun! Look at me! She spun around. Her suit was skin-tight, pink and black. It's a bit tighter than I expected. It's kind of embarrassing. Izuku felt the heat rush to his face, and he quickly diverted his gaze to the ground. It looks great. Very, aerodynamic, sensei. Ida raised his hand. He was clad in a full suit of white armor that made him look like a sleek, high-speed engine. This is the same battle center as the entrance exam. Will we be conducting urban battles again? No. All Might held up a finger. Villain cleanup is common, but statistically, the most heinous battles happen indoors. Imprisonment, house arrest, black market deals. In this society, the true darkness hides in the shadows. He pulled out a box labeled lots. You will be split into villain teams and hero teams for a 2-on-2 indoor battle. The villains guard a nuclear weapon in the hideout. The heroes must either capture the villains or secure the weapon within the time limit. The lots were drawn. Team A heroes Izuku Midoriya Ochako Uraraka. Team B villains Katsuki Bakugo Tenya Ida. Izuku froze. He looked at the ball in his hand. Letter A. He looked up. Bakugo was holding letter D. A feral grin split Bakugo's face. It wasn't a smile of joy. It was the smile of a predator that had just been locked in a cage with its prey. Destiny, huh? Bakugo mouthed. Izuku felt a chill run down his spine. His sensory perception picked up the spike in Bakugo's adrenaline. It tasted like ozone and burnt sugar. Wow, what are the odds? Uraraka said, looking between them. We're up against Bakugo and Ida-kun? That's really tough. Yeah, Izuku whispered, clutching his gloved hands. But we can't lose. Not here. The setup. 5 minutes later, Izuku and Uraraka stood outside the massive concrete building. It was 5 stories tall, a brutalist block of gray. Inside, on the 3rd floor, Ida was pacing around the papier-mâché nuclear core. Detailed simulation is key to success, Ida declared, his voice echoing in the empty room. He tapped the core. Bakugo. We must fortify the perimeter. If we barricade the door and clear the room of loose objects, Uraraka won't have ammunition for her zero-gravity. Bakugo was standing by the door, staring at the floor. He wasn't listening. Bakugo? I'm going down, Bakugo growled. What? Leaving the stronghold? That is poor strategy, Ida argued, chopping his hands. Our advantage lies in defense. Shut up, Bakugo snapped. He turned, his eyes burning red under his mask. That nerd, he's going to come in cautiously. He thinks he can outsmart me. He thinks his little magic trick makes him better than me. Sparks crackled in his palms. I'm going to show him that no matter what tricks a pebble learns, it still gets crushed. Bakugo kicked the door open and stalked into the hallway. Ida sighed, adjusting his helmet. This is highly irregular villain behavior. So chaotic. Infiltration. Infiltrating now. Izuku stepped through the open window on the 1st floor. Uraraka followed close behind. The hallway was dark. The air conditioning hummed, a low drone that masked smaller sounds. But not for Izuku. He closed his eyes for a split second. Smell of dust. Old concrete. Oil from the weapon upstairs. And nitroglycerin. Uraraka-san, Izuku whispered, holding up a hand. He's coming. Who? Kaken. Izuku opened his eyes. He didn't stay with the weapon. He's hunting. Hunting? Uraraka paled. But shouldn't he be defending? Not him, Izuku said grimly. To him, this isn't an exam. It's a duel. Izuku scanned the hallway. It was narrow. Bad for dodging. Good for explosions to create pressure waves. We need to move, Izuku said. But stay behind me. They crept forward. They reached a T-junction. Suddenly, the hair on Izuku's arms stood up. It was a sensation he had learned to trust implicitly in the mountains. The feeling of malice. Duck! Izuku tackled Uraraka. Boom! The corner of the hallway exploded. A massive fireball engulfed the space where their heads had been a second ago. Debris rained down on them. Bakugo emerged from the smoke, his gauntlets smoking. You reacted to that? Bakugo scoffed, looking disappointed. I was aiming to graze you. Uraraka-san, are you okay? Izuku asked, coughing. I'm fine, she replied, though her mask was scuffed. Izuku stood up. He faced Bakugo. You knew I'd come for you, Izuku said. Obviously, Bakugo spat. He raised his right hand. Come on, Deku. Use that weird kung fu. Use that wind blast. Let's see if you can hit me before I blow your face off. Izuku's mind raced. I can't use Sage Mode yet. I haven't gathered any energy. If I try to stand still now, he'll kill me. Aizawa's words rang in his head. If you can't fight without a minute of meditation, you'll die. He had to buy time. Uraraka-san, Izuku whispered. Go. What? I'll distract him. You go to the core. Ida will be alone. But, go! Izuku yelled as Bakugo lunged. Bakugo swung a right hook. Izuku didn't block. He knew he couldn't overpower Bakugo in his base state. He ducked under the swing, grabbing Bakugo's arm and using the momentum to flip him over his shoulder. It was a judo throw, simple, effective. Bakugo slammed into the concrete. Run! Uraraka scrambled past them and sprinted down the hallway. Don't look away! Bakugo roared. He fired an explosion from his palm into the floor. using the blast to propel himself back to his feet instantly. He spun, launching a kick at Izuku's head. Izuku blocked with his forearms. The impact rattled his bones. He's strong, Izuku grimaced, sliding back. Without natural energy reinforcing my muscles, he's physically stronger than me. And fast. Bakugo didn't let up. He unleashed a barrage of explosions. Left, right, feint blast. Izuku was on the defensive. He weaved, dodged, and parried, reading Bakugo's movements. Right swing coming. Duck. Explosion from the left. Roll. What's wrong, Deku? Bakugo screamed, firing a blast that singed Izuku's cheek. Why aren't you using your power? Are you looking down on me? I'm not. Izuku grunted, diving behind a concrete pillar. Then fight me properly. Bakugo blasted the pillar, chunks of concrete flying everywhere. Izuku huddled behind the crumbling cover. He was breathing hard. His heart rate was too high. He couldn't enter Sage mode like this. He needed stillness. But Bakugo was a storm. Think, Izuku commanded himself. How do I gather energy in a hurricane? Fukasaku's lesson. You do not need to drink the whole river. Just take a sip. Izuku looked at the shadows stretching across the floor. The building was dark. The shadows were quiet. He didn't need the perfect, minutes-long meditation to enter full Sage mode. He just needed a second of stillness to gather some energy. Just enough for one hit. He pressed his back against the pillar. He clasped his hands for exactly 2 seconds. Inhale. Stillness. For those 2 seconds, while Bakugo was charging his next blast, Izuku stopped existing in the panic. He felt the cool dampness of the concrete. He felt the stagnant air of the building. He drew it in. Not a river. A cupful. His eyes flashed yellow. No pigmentation appeared. It was too weak for that. But his senses sharpened. Bakugo rounded the pillar. Found you. He swung his gauntlet, aiming a massive explosion at point-blank range. Izuku didn't run. He stepped into the guard. He moved faster than he had all fight. The small boost of natural energy lubricated his joints, firing his synapses. He ducked under the gauntlet. He was now face to chest with Bakugo. What? Bakugo's eyes widened. Izuku planted his feet. He didn't punch Bakugo. He thrust his open palm forward, stopping 6 inches away from Bakugo's chest armor. Frog kata, phantom pulse. He expelled the small cup of energy he had gathered. Thwump. There was no physical contact, but the air between his hand and Bakugo's chest turned solid. A shockwave hammered into Bakugo's ribs. It wasn't enough to break bones, but it was enough to knock the wind out of him completely. Bakugo was launched backward. He flew 10 feet down the hallway, skidding on his back. He gasped, clutching his chest, coughing. What the hell? Bakugo wheezed, trying to suck in air. You didn't touch me. Izuku stood there, the yellow fading from his eyes instantly. He was panting. That tiny burst had exhausted the small amount he gathered. It's called frog kata, Izuku said, his voice trembling slightly. The energy around me is part of my body. My reach is longer than you think. Bakugo stared at him. The confusion in his eyes was replaced by a cold, terrifying realization. He stood up slowly. The coughing stopped. He lowered his head, his shoulders shaking. So that's it, Bakugo whispered. You really are something else now. He raised his gauntlet. His hand hovered over the pin of the grenade bracer. Young Bakugo, stop! All Might's voice boomed over the comm system. Are you trying to kill him? He won't die if he dodges. Bakugo screamed. I said stop. That attack is lethal indoors. Bakugo ignored the radio. He smiled, a broken, manic expression. You want to be a hero, Deku? Then tank this. He pulled the pin. Click. Time seemed to slow down for Izuku. He saw the ignition spark in the gauntlet. He heard the chemical reaction beginning. He's actually doing it, Izuku realized. He's firing a full-scale explosion in a closed corridor. There was no time to dodge. The hallway was too narrow. If he ran, the blast wave would catch him in the back. If he stayed, he would be incinerated. Gather! Izuku screamed internally. Gather everything. Now! He didn't clasp his hands. He didn't sit. He forced his body to become a vacuum. He pulled at the energy of the explosion itself, the heat, the pressure. It was dangerous, volatile energy. Except the chaos, the blast erupted. A torrent of fire and force consumed the hallway. It tore the walls apart, shattered the windows, and shook the entire building foundation. In the observation room, the class screamed, "Midoriya!" Uraraka yelled into her earpiece. The smoke was thick, black, and choking. It filled the monitor screens. "Sensei! Did he kill him?" Kirishima shouted, gripping the railing. All Might was about to rush out, his heart in his throat. "Medical bots! Dispatch immediately!" But then, the smoke swirled. A figure was standing in the epicenter of the scorch marks. Izuku Midoriya was still standing, his tracksuit was shredded. His right sleeve was gone. His skin was angry red, burned in places. But he was standing. His arms were crossed in an X block in front of his face. And his skin looked like stone. It was gray, rough, and covered in wart-like bumps. His eyes were wide open, the pupils horizontal bars, surrounded by heavy orange markings that covered half his face. He had entered an imperfect sage mode, almost a transformation, forced by the sheer necessity of survival. The natural energy had hardened his skin to the density of rock, acting as biological armor. Bakugo stared, the smoke clearing around him. He took it? Izuku lowered his arms. The stone-like texture of his skin began to flake off, returning to normal, leaving behind burns and bruises. He coughed, spitting out a wad of blood. "Is that all you have?" Izuku rasped. He was bluffing. He was running on fumes. That defense had cost him everything. His legs were shaking so hard he could barely stand. "Comms." Izuku tapped his earpiece. "Uraraka-san. What's the situation?" "Deku-kun. I heard the explosion. Are you okay?" "I'm still standing." "Where are you?" "I'm at the core." "But Ida-kun saw me. He cleaned the room. There's nothing for me to float. I can't get close to him without him speeding away." Izuku looked at Bakugo, who was recovering from the recoil of his own blast. Bakugo was preparing the second gauntlet. "I can't take another one," Izuku thought. "And Uraraka can't beat Ida without weapons." He looked up at the ceiling. The building was concrete. 5 stories. They were on the second floor. The core was on the third, directly above them. "Uraraka-san," Izuku said, staring at Bakugo. "Find something to hold on to." "What?" "I'm going to give you some ammo," Bakugo charged. "Don't ignore me." He launched himself with his left hand, aiming a blast at Izuku's face. Izuku didn't look at Bakugo. He looked at the ceiling. He reached deep down. There was no natural energy left in the immediate air. The explosion had burned it all away. But there was energy in the building. In the stone. In the structure. Izuku dropped into a squat. Detroit. Bakugo was 3 feet away. Izuku punched upward. Not at Bakugo. At the air. At the ceiling. Smash! Or rather, sage art, great air cannon. He released every last drop of chakra and natural energy he had left in a violent, vertical column of pressure. The sound was like the sky tearing open. The blast didn't hit Bakugo directly, but the updraft caught him. He was thrown into the wall like a ragdoll. The ceiling above them disintegrated. The concrete floor of the 3rd floor exploded upward. The 3rd floor. Ida was monologuing. "You cannot defeat me, hero. I have removed all debris. My speed is unmatched." Suddenly, the floor beneath him erupted. What? Huge chunks of concrete, rebar, and flooring were blasted into the air. The room was instantly filled with debris. Uraraka, clutching a pillar near the door, saw her chance. "Debris!" she cheered. "Thanks, Deku-kun." She touched a massive slab of floating concrete. "Home run comet!" She swung the pillar like a bat, knocking the debris toward Ida. "Evasive maneuvers!" Ida shouted, dodging the rocks. "This destruction is excessive." But while he was dodging the rocks, he lost track of Uraraka. She dove through the dust cloud. She didn't go for Ida. She went for the weapon. She hugged the papier-mâché bomb. "Captured!" She wheezed. "Hero team wins!" All Might's voice rang through the speakers. On the 2nd floor, the dust settled. Izuku stood for 1 second longer, staring at the hole he had made in the ceiling. The orange markings vanished completely. His eyes rolled back into his head. He collapsed face first onto the charred concrete. Across the hall, Bakugo pulled himself out of the rubble. He looked at the hole in the ceiling. He looked at the unconscious Izuku. His left gauntlet slipped off his arm, the strap broken. He aimed up? Bakugo whispered, his voice cracking. He wasn't even trying to beat me? He was winning the exercise? His hands shook. The humiliation was absolute. He hadn't just lost. He had been ignored in the final moment for the sake of the mission. The aftermath. The infirmary was quiet. He has 3 cracked ribs, second-degree burns on his arms, and severe muscle fatigue, recovery girl listed, shaking her head. And his energy channels, whatever you call them, are fried. He pushed way past his limit. All Might stood by the bed, looking at the sleeping boy. He blocked a point-blank explosion, Chio. With his bare skin. He turned his skin into stone, she corrected. If he does that too often, he won't be able to turn it back. All Might sighed. He is reckless. But he is brilliant. The review session. Back in the monitor room, the class was buzzing. That was insane! Kaminari yelled. Did you see that hole in the floor? Midoriya is a monster. Zero agreed. All Might cleared his throat. Quiet down. Now let's review the match. Ideally, the MVP of this battle was young Ida, eh? The class blinked. Not Midoriya or Uraraka? Why is that? All Might asked, pointing at Momo Yaoyorozu. Yaoyorozu stepped forward. Because Ida adapted best to the context of the training. Bakugo acted on a personal grudge and ignored the objective completely. His attack indoors was foolish. Midoriya. She glanced at the screen showing the medical bots carrying him away. Midoriya's plan was sound, but his execution was suicidal. He suffered massive damage. If this were real, he might be permanently disabled, and destroying the structural integrity of the stronghold to win is a Pyrrhic victory. He endangered the weapon he was supposed to secure. She took a breath. Uraraka let her guard down mid-battle. Only Ida prepared the battlefield and stayed focused on the objective. All Might sweated. She explained it better than I could. See correct. Gold star, young Yaoyorozu. Bakugo stood in the corner. He wasn't yelling. He wasn't arguing. He was staring at his hands. I lost, he thought. I used my gauntlets. I used everything. And he beat me with a punch that didn't touch me and a plan that ignored me. The sun set. School was over. Izuku walked out of the infirmary, bandaged heavily under his uniform. His arm was in a sling. He walked to the gate. Deku! Izuku turned. Bakugo was standing there. The sun was setting, casting long shadows, much like the day in the alleyway. But the dynamic was different now. Kaken? Bakugo was trembling. Tears were pricking the corners of his eyes, but his face was twisted in frustration. I lost, Bakugo said, his voice thick. I lost the match. And I lost the fight. You got some weird power from a toad or whatever. And you beat me, he pointed at his own chest. But this isn't over. I'm going to be the #1 hero. I'm going to beat you, and that icy hot bastard, and everyone else. Don't think you're ahead of me just because of one lucky hit. He turned around, wiping his eyes aggressively. Don't you dare die before I crush you properly, Deku! Izuku watched him storm off. For years, Bakugo's anger had terrified him. It had been the noise that drowned him out. But now, Izuku smiled, just a little. I won't, Izuku whispered to the empty street. He looked at his hand. He could still feel the phantom sensation of the impact, the frog kata. He had hit the air, and the air had hit back. He had a long way to go. He needed to get faster. He needed to handle the energy without breaking his body. But for the first time, he felt like he belonged. He wasn't the quirkless kid watching from the sidelines. He was the sage of Yue, and he had just taken his first step.